This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English, episode number 66. You may notice something is different. This is Dan speaking and not Martin. Don't worry, Martin is not dead. I repeat, he is not dead. He's just gone to the UK and he has forgotten to bring his microphone. You could say he has the memory of a goldfish, something our regular listeners will know he has accused me of being several times. If you're a new listener, check out episode number 61, I think, where we talk about people having memories like goldfishes. Anyway, here's the podcast. Remember, you can get all the details of all the rock and roll vocabulary on the website www.rockandrollenglish.com. So here's the podcast. Happy listening.
Dan the man, how are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
Fantastic. Did you go to a bonfire night when you were in England?
No.
Thanks for the update, Dan. Thanks for the update.
Well, you asked. In fact, there wasn't that many fireworks. I was a little bit disappointed.
Dan, we spent all of the last episode telling people how important this is in England. And now you're here telling everyone, no, I didn't go to a fireworks night and there were no fireworks.
I went to a modern art museum instead.
Oh, you're such a culture vulture, aren't you?
It was terrible. It was terrible. There was one exhibition where it was a video of someone washing their hands.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I once went to some art thing, trying to pretend that I was cultured, and there was a room and there was a TV on the floor and nothing else. And the TV was not even plugged into the wall. So, yeah, I'm with you there, Dan. You know, fuck art.
Yeah.
Anyway, how do we start the show, Dan?
Normally with a review.
Do you think we have a review?
Yes.
Yes, we do. This is from Mohammed Jaber. As always, I apologise if the pronunciation is wrong. And it says, I love your podcast from the bottom of my heart. You both have amazing characters, and when I listen to you, it brings me peace.
Fucking hell.
Well, that's what we try to do, Dan, okay? Spread peace, not war. Okay, I think John Lennon said that once, and now we're saying it. So, you know, very similar people, actually, aren't we? Me and you, maybe we're the new Beatles, Dan.
Oh, God.
I'll be Lennon, you be McCartney.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Done. Done.
Okay, just a quick update on the membership area we spoke about last week. We haven't had much feedback. So if you want to give us some feedback, that would be great. Otherwise, we probably won't do it because the membership area will involve just me and Dan.
Yeah.
Dan, you can pay me to be a member.
All right, how much do you want?
£100 a month.
£100 a month? No, thanks.
Okay, so it's just me in the membership area. Anyway, let's get on to today's show. Do you know what today's show is about, Dan?
You haven't told me, so unless I'm psychic.
Yes, but you are not psychic. You cannot predict the future. So, well, we are recording this before, but the podcast will go out on the 13th of November.
Oh, which is a big day.
Why is it such a special day, Dan?
Because it's your birthday.
Yes, but it's also Whoopi Goldberg's birthday from Sister Act, in case you didn't know.
Okay.
And
thanks.
it's also World Kindness Day, which, you know...
It's ironic.
That's exactly what I thought. I think maybe whoever invented World Kindness Day must have thought, you know, it's Martin Johnston's birthday. He's a kind guy. Let's make this day on his birthday. What do you think, Dan?
Or they thought you were so horrid, we need to balance this out.
Maybe. Notice there when I said the person that made this must have thought. That's a logical deduction, Dan. That's a nice piece of rock and roll grammar, that. Anyway, so this World Kindness Day got a few things about just being kind and how to be kind. Okay, Dan? Because I know you struggle with this, which means you have difficulty. So we're going to look at some ways and then hopefully you can be a bit kinder, because obviously we know.
So it's about me, yeah?
Well, yeah, it's always about you,
Okay.
Dan. You're the real star of the show, okay?
Not the leader.
Yeah, you're not the leader, but So apparently, being kinder makes you happier, healthier, and more attractive. So, do you think that's why I am more attractive than you?
I reckon so, yeah. I reckon so.
Nice little word there as well, there, Dan. I reckon so. That's just another way to say I think so. A bit more colloquial though. So rock and roll vocabulary straight away, Dan. Okay, so I've looked at some ways to be more kind. Okay, and the first one, which we have spoken about before here, is call someone you haven't spoken with in a long time. Notice there, present perfect. You haven't spoken with, because the action's still in progress. We spoke about this a few episodes ago, Dan, didn't we? With your, I'm going to contact an old friend every day. Any update on that situation?
Well, I ran out of friends after about 7 days, so I'm waiting a few months to start it again.
Nice phrasal verb there. I ran out of, when you finish friends, let's say. So they're all finished then, Dan, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, otherwise I'll start messaging people every 2 weeks, and they're thinking, what's going on? What does he want?
Exactly. Okay, well, the next one, very similar, but it's a slight difference. It says, call a lonely person. So what is a lonely person, Dan?
Someone who doesn't talk to anyone.
Yeah, someone that stays alone. Do you know any lonely people, Dan?
Well, you're pretty lonely, but I just can't bear to talk to you.
Well, nice word there again. I can't bear to talk to you. I can't stand it. I can't do it. Well, this is it, Dan. I am lonely, okay? And, I need support. Why don't you call me?
I think this is a good chance. To shout out to the listeners. Give Martin a call. He's lonely.
This is your responsibility, Dan. You need to call me, okay?
I need help.
Okay, sure. Okay, so the next one is a very important subject, in my opinion, okay? And I don't really know what to do with this, so I would like your advice, Dan. So it says, to be kind, you should hold the door open for people.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although, it's caused me a few issues in the past.
Well, this is it, Dan. It causes me a lot of issues. And when he says they're issues, he means problems. Because, what is the point? If you can see someone walking behind you, and let's say they're 5 to 10 seconds away from the door, do you have to wait those 5 to 10 seconds, or can you just close the door?
I normally give them 1.5 seconds, roughly. If they're not close enough, I'm shutting that motherfucker.
So nice vocabulary there again, where he said, I give them 1.5 seconds roughly, which means approximately. And he also used the term motherfucker, which is just really for comedy value. But yeah, Dan, you have the cutoff point of 1.5 seconds, which is like the maximum point. I still have not set that cutoff point. I think 5 is for me is maximum. But then if someone
5 seconds.
Well, I'm kind, Dan. You're not.
You're not. I once held a door open for someone, and I held the door and they just walked straight out because I think they had a lot of bags on carrying, and they walked out, and then the person behind them walked out, and about 5 people walked out the door until it looked like I was just holding the door open as part of the service for the shop.
Well, you haven't got a job at the moment, Dan, so maybe a door holder could be a good job for you. Go round, ask the shops, do you need anyone to hold this door? I've got a lot of experience holding doors. I can do it for you.
Yeah, they asked for a demonstration.
Exactly. I once had an awkward situation. Remember, so awkward is like embarrassing. When I was in this building in London and there seemed to be a door every sort of 10 metres. I was walking, I would hold the door open for the person behind me. He would say thanks. Next door, I hold it. He says thanks. Next door, I hold it. He said thanks. And I thought, this is too awkward now because he keeps saying thanks. So then I just changed direction to avoid this situation because it was just too awkward, Dan. I couldn't do it anymore.
Why is that awkward? He's being polite.
Yeah, but it was just because there were about 10 doors and I thought I can't let him say thanks 10 times and I have to say like you're welcome 10 times. So
But
after,
what's more irritating if they don't say thank you? I mean, that
yeah, the first
boils my blood.
Oh, nice. Boils my blood. Makes me very angry. Nice term there. One thank you is enough for me, Dan, okay? Because I'm kind, as I said. The next one, very strange, says, so remember, this is World Kindness Day. It says, change the paper in the photocopier.
What?
So, do that, Dan, just to be kind. Do you have a photocopier at home?
No. Do you?
No, there's one at work, and to be honest, I don't even know how to change the paper, so I couldn't even do that, even if I wanted to. Second conditional there, Dan. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. The next one is offer your seat on the bus or, well, tube, as we would say. Do you do that, Dan?
Yes, but I hate it when it's... For example, I was in London on the weekend, and the tube was so busy, I was sat down. And if I'd looked around, I'm sure there would have been someone somewhere who I could have offered a seat to. But because I didn't want to go through the hassle of getting up, walking over and saying, do you want to sit down? I pretended to be asleep.
Good idea there, Dan. I have tried that before. Notice how Dan told that story there, and he said, if I had looked around, I could have, because it's all in the past. I like it, Dan. Like third conditional there, if I had looked around, I could have offered my seat. Yeah, that's difficult on the tube. I always sit in the middle seat because then the people that get on the tube always go to the nearest seat. So there's more possibility you have to move for someone.
Mm.
And anyway, for me to offer my seat, someone needs to be more or less dying to... for me to get up. I just sort of look the other way and hope they don't look at me.
That's not very kind, though.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Although once, I remember, I was sitting there and then a woman stood in front of me as if to say, what are you doing? Get up. Like, I'm a woman.
Mm.
I should sit there. And so I looked at her and said, oh, sorry, do you want to sit down? And she said, yeah. So I got up, let her sit down, and I thought, she's only about 35. There's nothing wrong with her. She's in perfect health. She's not pregnant. She's about 35. I thought, why am I giving my seat to you?
You should have asked her when she said that. You should have said, are you pregnant?
Well,
no.
that could have been awkward. So notice there, we use those modal verbs in the past again there, Dan. When Dan said, you should have asked her, and I said, that could have been awkward. Real rock and roll grammar today, Dan.
Mm.
Another one here is pay someone a compliment. I don't know why we use the word pay someone a compliment, because you don't give them any money. It's just give someone a compliment, really. So here we are, Dan. You're
not going to ask me to compliment you again, are you?
Well,
because this has happened so many times now. It's making me a little bit worried.
Considering this is also like the podcast of my birthday, Dan, I think the least you can do is give me a compliment.
You've got great hair.
Wow, that is true, actually. You, on the other hand, have shit hair, and you have always had shit hair.
Thank you. You're so kind.
Well, Okay, yeah. I suppose I'm not the kindest person in the world. The next one is smile more often, Dan. How often do you smile?
As much as I have to.
As much as I have to. Like it's an obligation.
No, I smile all the time. You just don't see it because I don't smile much around you, but...
Yeah, sure you do, Dan. I actually admit I don't smile very much, and people often think I'm miserable, but that's not the case.
You are pretty miserable.
No, Dan, I'm so happy. I'm like over the moon happy every day. Nice expression there, over the moon, when you are very happy. It's just my face doesn't show it, but believe me, the rest of my body is loving every minute of life.
That's a little bit worrying.
Okay, and the next one here is forgive someone. Okay? So I just want to tell you, Dan, I forgive you. Okay? I forgive you for being a complete twat. So that's not a nice word, by the way. What I used there. It's like a strong way to say idiot. But
Don't say it to your kids.
do not say that to your kids. Not recommended, okay?
Mm.
Speaking of kids, though, that brings us nicely onto the next one, where it says, teach your kids kindness. We were talking about your kids, I think, was it the last episode? The one before?
My kids?
Well, kid, we said. The name for Dan the Man Jr.
I can't remember that. Yeah, I guess so.
You told us you were going to ask Mrs. Dan the Man
Oh, yeah.
about the name.
I didn't.
You didn't.
No.
See, what a letdown. So, a letdown is when someone disappoints you. And that is what you are, Dan. A letdown. But, speaking of kids, I had a very embarrassing thing in a lesson yesterday. I had a kids class. I showed a picture of them when I was 20. And I said, who is this? And one of them said, your son. And I said, if I had a kid that was 20, that means, well, I would have had that kid when I was 13.
Yeah. What? How old were the kids you were teaching?
About 11.
Oh, okay. So they can think. That's not like a 4-year-old shouting that out.
What? Because 4-year-olds can't think.
Well, they can think, but an 11-year-old can look at someone and have an educated guess at how old they are. They must have thought you were 40.
Probably 50.
Maybe, yeah.
And the next one, again, very interesting point, is stop complaining for a week. Do you think that's possible for you, Dan?
You complain far more than me.
But I'm like, I admit it though.
All I do is answer unenthusiastically to your average questions, whereas you are actually miserable.
Nice word there. Your average questions means they're not great, but also they're not terrible. They're somewhere in the middle. So it's good to know you don't think my questions are terrible, Dan.
I'm trying to be more kind, that's all.
Okay, thanks. But the difference is, Dan, I admit that I complain a lot. I'm like a drug addict who cannot stop. Okay, some people like cocaine. I like complaining. Okay, so I'm not stopping for a week, but you also complain, Dan. You just don't admit it.
When do I complain?
All the time, Dan. Okay, all the time.
Okay.
Another one here, which I think is absolutely bonkers, which is a nice funny word for crazy. It's not a swear word, so you can use that one. And it says, leave some money on the street for someone. For somebody to find.
I'll just pick it up myself.
And it even says, leave a bank note. So not even like, £1. A bank note is minimum of 5. Dan wouldn't do that because he's too tight. Remember, tight, someone that doesn't like spending money.
I spend money all the time. You're tight. You're as tight as a duck's ass.
I'm not sure if we've had that one before, but that's a common expression to call someone as tight as a duck's ass. I've never looked at a duck's ass, but I imagine they're tight.
I'd imagine so, yeah.
When I was a kid, though, I actually found £60 on the floor. And that, believe me, was a fantastic day.
I thought you were going to say you found money up a duck's ass for a second.
I told you, Dan, I've never seen a duck's ass, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so the last one here, Dan, is be kind to yourself, okay?
Cheers.
So,
how do you suggest I go about that?
Oh, nice term there. How do you suggest I go about that? He's basically saying, how do you suggest I do that? I have a suggestion here, actually, Dan. So tonight, get in your pajamas.
Oh, God.
Put on Sex and the City and just pig out on ice cream. So when I say there, pig out, I mean like eat a lot of it until you feel sick almost.
Is that how you look after yourself?
What are you talking about, Dan? I've never watched Sex and the City.
You told me that's how you learnt Italian.
Yeah, I'm lying. It's a great program, Dan. It's a great program, okay?
Who's your favourite character?
Good question. I would say Samantha.
Is that the goer?
So when he says goer, he means the person that is, let's say, how can we describe this, Dan?
Most inclined to have sex with people.
Yes, that's a good description. And yes, that is her. But that's not the reason I like her, Dan. I like her because she's a wonderful, intelligent woman. Okay?
Sure.
And on that note, I think we should probably leave the podcast.
Well, yeah, I hope you've had a good birthday. Or you are having a good birthday.
Well, I will have a good birthday, Dan, because this episode is being recorded before.
Does this mean I have to contact you on your birthday now, or will this do?
Call someone lonely, Dan. We've discussed this, okay?
Okay, I'll call you Monday.
Okay, I'll be sitting by my phone all day waiting for that phone call, okay?
Cool.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for your time. We'll see you soon.
Speak to you later.
See you later.
Okay, that was me and Martin talking rubbish about World Kindness Day and his birthday, of course. So let's look at that rock and roll vocabulary. We had lonely person. Remember, a lonely person is someone who has no friends and stays alone. Just like me and Martin. Thank God we have each other, or we would have no one. We had I can't bear to talk to you. I said that to Martin because I don't like talking to him. We had the word issues, which is the same as saying problems. I also mentioned that I give people roughly 1.5 seconds to pass through the door, and roughly is the same as saying approximately. We also had cut-off points, which meant the maximum time I would hold the door open for someone. I also used the expression, because you may have noticed I use more rock and roll English than Martin, that something boils my blood, which is another way of saying to say something makes me very angry. You will also hear it said another way, which is that makes my blood boil. Just like Martin. Martin makes my blood boil. We had over the moon, which means when you are extremely happy. Martin said he forgives me for being a twat, which is not a nice term and is a strong way to say idiot. So don't go saying it to people you actually like. Martin also called me a letdown, which is another term for disappointment. And he also used the word bonkers, which means totally crazy. But this isn't a swear word. In fact, it's quite playful. I also said Martin is as tight as a duck's arse, which means he is extremely careful with his money and he very rarely spends it. A fairly funny expression, but not the nicest thing to say. But in Martin's case, it's absolutely true. We also had how do you suggest I go about that, which is another way of saying how do you suggest I do that. We also had pig out, which just means to eat a lot of something until you almost feel sick because you've eaten so much of it. And we had the word goer, which basically means someone who enjoys having a lot of sex. Anyway, all the rock and roll English is on the website, www.rockandrollenglish.com. Don't worry, next week Martin will be doing this again. And oh yeah, as you would have heard, it is Martin's birthday today, so if you like Martin, and even if you don't, leave him a message on the comments saying happy birthday. He's 33 today, but looks much, much older, so he's feeling a little bit down and upset. So I'm sure he would appreciate your love and support. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week. Keep on rocking.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.